Welcome to the Poshak Podcast with me, Aisha Fatima. This podcast is all about nutrition and wellness and diseases. So, through this series of podcast episodes, we will be traveling through infant and child nutrition for the next couple of days. So, I will be dealing with infant and toddler nutrition. What are the do's, what are the don'ts, what to be included, excluded, how to help child reach optimal nutrition. So, kicking in the first episode with breastfeeding for infants, this is going to be a short podcast outlining the various benefits and certain things that you have to consider while breastfeeding your child. So, the first thing that I would like to tell you is when is that you have to start breastfeeding. Yeah, it is very important. You have to start breastfeeding within the half an hour of the child's life, at least at the max 1 hour. So the first milk that comes out is some called as colostrum, which is not like the normal regular breast milk that the child has. It is quite thick and it is yellowish in color. So it has a lot of nutrients that your child needs to have. And it also acts as a natural vaccine against various infections both in the earlier and the later stages of life. So why is breastfeeding so much emphasized on parenting? It is because it has physiological, maternal, socio-economic and psychological benefits that you will not even understand until you have breastfed your child. It also improves mother and child bonding. And the most common thing that most of the mothers do is feed their baby with something called as the pre-lactal feeds, which is nothing but sugar water or jaggery or honey or whatever food and beverage their ancestors followed, or they just think that has high amount of nutrients in it. And to be very honest, it is not really advised to give your child any pre-lactal foods as it is unnecessary, and also the child's stomach is not ready to digest such feeds. It is only ready to digest mother's milk. And you also have to take in mind that for the first 6 months it is only exclusive breastfeeding and no other feeds, even water. Now, how will you breastfeed your child? There are certain positions that you have to follow while breastfeeding your child. So it is always better if you go and ask your nurse or your pediatrician for the positions that is much comfortable for you, so that they'll be able to practically help you with the position. And also the latching technique. It is also advised that the child has to cover the entire area of the nipple along with the alveolar area, so that there is much better sucking of the milk from the breast. Next is the most common perception that the mother have is I am a mother of a twin, or I have a baby who is a preterm, or who has a low birth weight, or who has an obese weight, who is more than 4 or 5 kg. So I do not know if my breast milk is going to be enough or if it is going to be too much for my baby. Never ever worry for that, because the nature is so abundant on us that it has already tailor-made the milk that it meets the requirement of the children. Your breast milk is very different from that of your sisters or that of your friends or that of your neighbors. So every child has a very tailor-made nutritional that is supplied to them. So never ever have the feeling that your child needs something apart from breast milk. And also, starting on with artificial feeds like powdered feeds is only recommended if and only when a pediatrician or a nutritionist feels like the child is going to end up having certain nutrition deficiencies, or in very worst case scenarios. So it is always a big no to artificial feeds in the first 6 months of life. And the next thing that I would like to tell you is the cues that you have to just look out for when the child is going to have their breast milk. So basically, babies are fed by two different methods or ways we call in breastfeeding. The first one is the demand breastfeeding, and the second one is the scheduled one. So always demand breastfeeding is the best, where the child, she or herself, is wantedly asking in the sense sending out cues to the mother or the parents stating that she or he is in need of milk as she or he is hungry. The second type is nothing but you give the child on specific timings, like at 1 hour gap or 2 hour gap or 3 hour gap, based on the child's drinking patterns in the first few weeks of life. It is always suggested that you give the child demand breastfeeding. And what are the certain cues that you can look out for is like the child starts searching for your breast, or the child becomes fuzzy, or sometimes the child becomes very alert, she or he starts crying. You have to have a watch on these indicators so that you give them the correct quantity of nutrition at the right time. And the next one is the way in which you're going to breastfeed your child. It should never be a unilateral breast that is being used to feed the child. Both your breasts should be used for feeding the child at each and every feed. So approximately for 15 to 20 minutes if the child is going to feed, then the first 10 minutes will be on the right and the next 10 minutes will be on the left. So this is just an approximate timing that I'm talking about. It can even be shorter or prolonged based on your child's need. And also be very careful of not using any express breast milk in bottles, syringes, or using fingers, as this may lead to something called as a nipple confusion, and which will also help hinder you in your normal breastfeeding process. The last thing that I would like to emphasize again on both the mother, the father, and also the family members is that always the mother produces enough amount of milk, and it is mostly more to do with psychological stimulation of the mother. So if the mother has a negative thinking that the child will not be able to get enough milk, or she will not be able to produce enough milk that the child needs, then definitely you will have a problem breastfeeding your child, because nursing your child is the most eternal thing that you can do for your child, and it is a pure form of love that you're going to show them. So always do have a very positive mindset when you start breastfeeding your child, and please don't have all these negative considerations and fear of breastfeeding them. So with this note, I would like to end this episode here, and I'll see you with a new episode. Thank you.